Hi folks, it's Richard from Inclusive Driving again here. We're in the middle of a fuel crisis. Whether or not you believe that's brought on by the government or by people believing there's a shortage of fuel when there isn't is irrelevant to this. You're watching this because you want to learn how to drive your car using as little fuel as possible. And isn't that a good idea anyway, even when there isn't a fuel crisis? So Inclusive Driving a few years ago made a commitment to become a carbon neutral driving school, and we're still doing that. So one of the things that we really believe in is teaching fuel efficient driving right from the start of somebody's lessons. So the first question really we should be asking about fuel efficient driving is, do I need to make this journey? So let's just talk briefly about this. The national standards for driving cars and light vans, they do say, consider, apologies for the dog barking, they do say consider, is your journey actually necessary? Is driving a car the best option for that particular journey? Could you consider walking if it's a shorter distance? Could you get on a push bike? Could you use public transport? Could you share your car journey with somebody else? So you have more than one person in the car going to the same destination. Now, having said that, that's probably not why you're watching this video. You're probably watching because you've already decided that a car journey is going to be the most useful form of transport for you, and you want to know how to do that journey using as little fuel as possible. So let's talk about that now. So to understand this, we really need to have a bit of an understanding of the laws of physics. This sounds really boring, doesn't it? I promise I'm not going to go into heavy maths and that sort of thing. I'm not a physics teacher. But we need to understand a basic principle that this is Newton's laws of motion. Whenever we try and get something moving, so in this case a car, it takes significantly more energy, petrol or diesel, to get the car moving to a certain speed compared to keeping it at that speed. So if we're accelerating from some traffic lights up to say 30 miles an hour, we use a lot more fuel to get to 30 miles an hour than we do to then keep it at 30 miles an hour. So really, acceleration is the bit that costs you the most money. It's the bit that uses the most fuel. So if we can do gentle acceleration, so instead of going 0, 10, 20, 30 straight away, if we can go 0, 5, 10, 15, all the way gently to 30, we are using less fuel to do that. If we can then keep the car at a steady 30 miles an hour, we're using very little fuel compared to the acceleration phase. So the second real key is planning ahead, trying to judge your driving, looking at what colour the traffic lights are ahead, looking to see what the cars in the distance are doing, if they're slowing down, so that you can keep the car moving at constant speed as much as possible. Now, another thing that we need to be aware of is that basically any time your foot is on the accelerator pedal, it's using fuel. The harder you're pressing the accelerator pedal, the more fuel you're using. So if you can see that the traffic in the distance is starting to slow, or you can see lots of brake lights, or you think that by the time you get to that traffic light at the top of the hill, it will have gone red, then simply take your foot off the gas pedal nice and early and roll to the traffic light, roll to a stop. That's saving you money because your foot is off the accelerator and you're not using any fuel. Now here's another little tip that many people forget. Lots of driving instructors and car videos will tell you about planning ahead, not accelerating heavily. But here's another one. If you are going up a hill, try not to accelerate at all. If anything, you want your speed to decrease a little bit, but we've got to consider we need to move at a safe speed and consider what's happening behind us, of course. But if we can maybe build up some speed before we get to a hill and then keep the speed steady up the hill, that's another fuel saving. You don't want to be accelerating away from gravity while gravity is trying to pull you down the hill. Conversely, if you're going down a hill, make use of that to help build up some speed. When we are cruising, so by that we mean keeping a steady speed, let's use cruise control whenever possible. So most cars these days have either a speed limiter or a cruise control facility, or both. If you set your speed limiter to say 30 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour, whatever the speed limit is, or whatever speed you feel is appropriate for the traffic conditions, then the computer in the car is going to control that speed at exactly 40 miles an hour. If you try and control the speed manually with the accelerator pedal, you'll constantly be going up and down a little bit. You'll be going up to 42 and then down to 38 and then back up to 42. Well, all of those increases in speed from say 38 to 42, that's acceleration. So that's using more fuel than it would if you were keeping a constant 40 miles an hour. So learn how to use cruise control in your car. If you don't have cruise control, then use the speed limiter. It does exactly the same thing. You just have to have your foot on the accelerator to use the speed limiter, whereas cruise control does let you relax your foot. But in terms of fuel saving and fuel efficient driving, cruise control and the speed limiter do exactly the same thing. When we are at that cruising speed as well, the only fuel we need to use is really to overcome what we call rolling resistance and air resistance. So as we're driving forwards, we are pushing air out of the way. That requires energy. And we are overcoming friction between our rubber tyres and the tarmac or the concrete road. And we call that rolling resistance. If we can minimise those, we'll use less fuel. And there are some ways to reduce that. One of them is drive slower. The laws of physics, I'll put a formula up there, but what this basically means is driving at higher speeds requires that you push significantly more air out of the way than driving at lower speeds. So driving faster doesn't use a bit more fuel, it uses way more fuel. So if you're on a 70 mile an hour road and you don't need to do 70, why not do 60 instead? That's going to save you some fuel. If you're on a 60 road, why not do 50? This requires maybe that you leave your home a little bit earlier to do your journey. That's going to save you some fuel, isn't it? So that's worthwhile. Finally, we come to a few car maintenance things, and these are the things that other videos will tell you as well. Check your tyre pressures. Make sure your tyre pressures match what it says in the owner's handbook. You'll normally find them towards the back of your handbook, or often if you open one of the front doors, the driver's side or the passenger side, there'll be a little plate in there, sticker telling you what the recommended tyre pressures are. Check your oil. Oil is what lubricates your engine. If the engine is having to kind of fight with oil that's old and sticky, then that's causing more friction, which is going to use more energy, which comes from fuel. So check your oil and travel light. The formula we looked at early on, the formula for acceleration, the heavier the vehicle, the more energy it needs to get up to speed. So if you can unload all of the unnecessary items, things that you don't need, bottles of water, climbing gear, whatever your hobbies are, if you don't need them for that journey, leave them at home. Make your car lightweight, and that will save you significantly more fuel. So I hope that's given you some ideas on how to drive with as little fuel as possible. Be sensible, don't join the panic buying, and we'll see you on another video very soon.